Captain's Log, episode 31. This week's episode of the Beervengers podcast is sponsored by Astoria Beer and Cheese Ditmars, located at 35-11 Ditmars Boulevard in Astoria, Queens. Enjoy the eclectic array of craft beer, artisanal cheeses, and specialty grocery items at Astoria Beer and Cheese Ditmars, home bar to yours truly, Captain Porter Brown Stout. This week, Captain, Beer Wonder, and guest host Belgian Babe welcome fellow podcaster and Beervenger-to-be, Josh Mills from Acquired Tastings, who ironically had a flavor we had no trouble adapting our palates to. If you listen to episode 23, you know that Josh and his father/co-host gifted us with a wonderful 4-pack from an outstanding Arkansas brewery that we shared on the show. Out of gratitude and sheer curiosity, we just had to know more. Spoiler alert, we weren't disappointed. We did, however, struggle to come up with the perfect Beervenger name for Josh, though we promise we'll come up with one in due time. Or, overdue time, to be more precise. Remember to like, star, and subscribe us whenever that feels appropriate, and send us your emails at thebeervengers@gmail.com if you have any questions, suggestions, or if you just like hearing us talk about you on the show. And now, without further ado, please enjoy episode 31, Acquiring Beervengers.
Well, we're the Beervengers, Beervengers, Beervengers.
We're the Beervengers.
Welcome to the Beercast, everyone. Coming to you from an undisclosed location in Astoria, Queens, I am Captain Porter Brown Stout.
And coming to you from an undisclosed location in the County of Kings, it is I, the Beer Wonder!
And coming to you from an undisclosed location in the County of Queens, I am the Belgian Babe.
And we are
The
Beervengers.
That's right. We are the Beervengers, everyone. Thanks for coming to the Beercast. Everyone out there, Beervengers at home or wherever you are, even if you're away from home, we're happy to have you here. We've got a great show coming up, lots of pours, and we have a special guest. You may remember him. You don't know, not him specifically, but we talked about him in his podcast a while when we had our special fan appreciation show a few weeks back. Please welcome Josh Mills from the Acquired Tastings podcast.
Woo!
Ooh, thanks for having me on. I'm super excited to be on with you guys today.
Yeah, so are we. And I should also mention you are coming in all the way from Little Rock, Arkansas.
That's right.
So we will have a wonderful meeting of different cultures today.
Exactly.
So we have all of this happening. Especially, beer cultures was what I meant specifically, because we've talked about how every locality you go to has an entirely different scene, and we want to include as many of them as we can on the show. But before we get to any of that, I think it's time we get to the pours, right?
Sounds
Oh,
great.
good. I'm so glad you said that, because I happen to have a sponsored pour, and I'm really
Belgian,
looking forward to
Belgian Babe.
Yeah, yes, Beer Wonder.
I realize that Huck is not here this week, and I realize that you're used to being the guest. I understand that. Yes,
you know what
but
goes with that. So
this is now your third time on the podcast, so
yeah, that's true.
I do think we're just, as is tradition, we're just going to have to give the first pour to Josh.
Thank you.
You know what? I think you're right.
All right.
Over to you.
I'm pouring.
Sorry about
Speaking
that,
of
Josh.
that's okay. it's beer, so we're all excited about it. We want to get it out in the glass.
We are.
So, speaking of cultures, I am actually pouring it's really hard to see. This is called the Druid
dark.
Mixed
Ooh.
Culture Stout from a local
fun.
brewery called Lost 40. It's
Oh.
actually so you guys have had the Nighty Night from this brewery.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This is they take two of their stouts and they do a mixed wild culture that they actually cultivate locally.
Oh, fun.
That is a nice
And
pour.
Turns it
That's gorgeous.
Pour, yeah.
Wow.
turns it a little bit sour. So
Yeah,
That's
aggressive
what-
head on the
Mhm.
aggressive head on the top of that one, but really good looking.
yeah.
Nice.
Gorgeous.
Looks good.
All right. I think now that she's atoned for her mistake. I think we let Belgian
Yes,
Babe.
Belgian Babe, you are
We
our
don't,
other
yeah.
special guest.
Alrighty then. Well, I am pouring a Fifth Hammer, which is around the corner here in Long Island City, New York. This is the Fifth Hammer Cherries in the Dark.
Yeah,
and
and
I will.
And I think we need to mention that beer is a
sponsored pour.
And it is a Belgian style ale with cherries, as I'm the Belgian Babe. It seems appropriate. So I'm going to try to get a better crack on this than I did on the Nighty Night a few weeks ago.
Ooh, excellent crack on that one.
Nice.
I'll take it. And here we go.
Okay, into the old pony bar glass.
That's
Hold it up a
correct.
little higher so we can take a peek at that thing.
Ooh, let me try to get my fingers out of the way here. Okay.
There you go.
It's tricky.
It can be a little bit tricky in the logo and the. But it's got decent head retention there, or actually a lot of head production. Looks like a kind of a browner beer. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say it's almost looks like a dark ale. But we'll see where we go with that. So you sure can. Yep.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
It's a good logo.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Fifth Hammer with a Roman V for 5.
Excellent.
So it's the Fifth Hammer. All righty.
And
Who's next?
Is that all you have there?
Oh, no. Since we are hosting our acquired tastings colleague here, I have brought a cheese for pairing with the beer. This is a new favorite I found. It's called the Saint Angel Triple Cream. I just saw it in the store one day and grabbed it and keep going back for more of it. It's sort of brie adjacent. I don't know that it's considered an actual brie. And Josh, I'm sure you can tell us a lot more about it, but it's a very nice soft cheese. Now, the strange thing is, I was looking it up the other day before I knew that Astoria Beer and Cheese was providing me with a beer for today, and I was trying to find out what sort of beer goes with a triple cream. And I swear this is true. A website that I went to said pair it with this and this or Belgian ales. So that just seems meant to be.
Have it.
So, yep. So we'll see how that goes.
All right. Well, Captain, I've been enforcing all the rules today, so I feel like it's only right that I let you go next.
Well, all right. I'd be happy to. Now, ours is local to a degree, but this is local because it's the East Coast. I was at one of our local supermarkets the other day, and I happened to see this great new beer from Duclaw. Do you have Duclaw in Arkansas, Josh?
No, we don't. Sadly.
But have you seen it? Have you ever heard of it?
I've heard of it. I haven't actually seen or been able to taste one.
I was looking at their distribution map, and I think Arkansas borders like 3 states that do get it. Like I saw Tennessee, and
that's usually how it works for us. They go all the way up to the river. They're like, we're done.
Yeah, it's like there's like 21 states. The entire like right side of the map is colored in. But this is one of their special editions. I mean, they're best known for things like Sweet Baby Jesus and Dirty Little Freak. But this is part of their Patriarchy series. It's a Mexican hot chocolate brown ale.
Ooh.
So let's see what we have here in this. It was one I was just so surprised to see it at the grocery store. I'm like, well, that one's coming home with me.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good slow pour right there. It looks really thick and viscous, although a very creamy head.
It does. Yeah, it's got a nice head. It's here we go.
Perfect. In that classic Astoria Beer and Cheese glass.
Yes. And in honor of our guest, I was looking for some tastings for it, and I looked online and I saw that the best things to have to pair with a brown ale is steak and pork. So I went over to the taco truck around the corner from me since it's a Mexican hot chocolate brown ale, and I wound up getting some spicy pork tacos.
Nice.
To go with it, yeah. So I'll make this noise now, and Beer Wonder, your glass is still empty.
I know. I have one to do, and as we've been sort of keeping it local here, I am doing a local one. I have got a beer from our dear friends at Non Sequitur Beer Project here in Brooklyn. This is their Just Little Rawaka, which is part of their single hop series. I believe it was the second one that they did, and they're calling it their single hop tiny IPA. So also just check out that can art. Always excellent with them.
Very
Always
cute.
kind of
Great.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
That hop has got every feeling in the book. And let's see how this one turns out.
Ah,
Oh,
nice crack.
oh, I was going to say it's a freshie, so it's foaming. Oh, my. Ooh,
Woo!
very excited. So we're going to have to do a slower, gentle pour on that one because this beer is ready to go.
Like you said, that beer's got all the feelings. All those hops are ready to just jump out and
Yeah,
get in
they
your
just want
face.
everything. But you can, I mean, even though this is not perhaps the greatest pour of my life, we'll get a little better hopefully as
Well, it's
the
not like
head
you
dies
pour
down.
beer for a living or anything.
No, it's not like I get paid to do this, but you can see it's got really loose bubbles in the head. It's got a
Yeah.
beautiful golden kind of like straw color here, and it's all citrus on the nose. So
So that'll
I'm
be really nice when that settles. Yeah.
yes. And while we're letting it have its feelings, in honor of our dear friends over at uh acquired tastings, yes, there we go.
Yes.
I was like I don't want to screw this up on the podcast because that would be very rude of me, and I am the arbiter of what is polite apparently.
That's his job, yeah.
Yes. I have brought with me a delightful sharp English cheddar, hoping that some of the sharpness from the cheddar and some of the hops could be a fun combination. And if I know anything about our friends at Acquired Tastings, you might have some mixed feelings about IPAs, so I'm excited to talk to you about those soon.
Yeah, we do. Well,
Mhm.
let's be honest. I have mixed feelings about it. My dad
Yes.
loves them. Dad'll drink them all day long, but
Mhm.
I do have some mixed feelings about it. But I'm excited. That one looks like it's good coming off, especially when you say citrus is kind of the first thing that hit you. That kind of makes me think, okay, it might be up my alley a little bit.
All right.
Yeah.
If everyone will raise a glass, please.
All right.
And slancha and kanpai and cheers and etc.
Cheers.
Cheers, everybody.
Mm.
Had a beer a couple months ago, maybe not that long ago, from a Brazilian Japanese beer. And well, I mean, they're doing contract brewing, some of it out of Long Island, but they're women from Brazil of Japanese descent.
Oh, cool.
And every time I talk about them on social media, they say "kampai," and I found out that's the Japanese saying for cheers.
Cool.
So it's stuck.
Learn something new every day.
Yeah.
So Josh, this I did a quick, a check of our dear Lord Google on this one to find out more about this druid.
Yeah.
And I am really fascinated because I gather there's also some barrel aging that might be happening.
So it's what it is they actually have their own footer that they'll use.
Okay.
So it's aged in a footer basically to give it that sour once they add in the cultures. From my understanding, that's the part of it. This is part of a series that they call their Wild Barrel series that they release locally, and it's a massive footer that they decided to build. But they've done a sour stout. They did a whole line of them, like with a barley wine that was single culture. They did a wild cider as well, which was really cool. So, but yeah, I love this beer. It's absolutely delicious.
I always love those great big bottles. Now I see why you're only doing one pour tonight.
Yeah. Well, so I thought about bringing a second pour from kind of their same idea. They have a saison that they do where they went to one of our local public gardens and actually cultivated the yeast from some of the fruit plants that are in that garden. But
Wow.
it's a 750, and I was like, I don't need to have this at. I think this is at 10%.
Woo.
And then go into something, go into a whole another bottle. Yeah, so I think it's got to be on here somewhere. But it's up there around the 8, 10 plus percent on the bottle.
So with it being a sour that's got some aging going on, it looks like it's the kind of thing that would have some of those sort of richer, darker, maltier, bready, almost crusty notes. But if it's a sour, I imagine you got some tartness. What are you getting out of this one?
Yeah, so with this one, kind of on your nose, you get that like the bitter side of coffee, and then you also get a sharp, tart, dried cherry.
Oh,
so
nice.
You get this really flow back and forth where it's like you bit into that cherry that's super sour but has just a little bit of sweetness right after you drank a cup, some good espresso with that good astringent bitter in it. And then it really just makes your mouth pucker, makes it water again, and that you just keep going back. So this is actually like their base beers of this are their two stouts that they do. Their Forest Queen, which is their regular stout, and then their Forest King Imperial Stout. And then they mix them together to get a blend, and then use the wild cultures to sour it in a footer to give it kind of that nice big soury taste, but you have that good stout backbone there. That's all the things that most people who like stouts say they hate.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's a wild combination put together for a lot of our stout friends. So
Yeah, so it's all those things that like that you want everybody to like in a stout, soured, and kind of makes it a little bit more friendly, a little bit more sweeter on the palate. Makes it more, in my opinion, it makes it more approachable.
Is it? But
well,
is it not a? But is it a cloying sweetness or just a crisp sweetness?
It's a dried fruit sweetness. So
Okay.
for it's kind of right there in the middle. It's so if I would have known everybody was doing pairings, I would have brought as one thing. I would have brought strawberries because
nice.
right now in Arkansas, strawberries are in season. They are big, beautiful, sweet yet tart with that perfect balance. And so I think that would go really well with kind of the beer itself to kind of play on that sour sweet feel plus the roasty kind of roasty note that you get in at the bottom of it.
Josh, that just means we're going to have you back again. You can bring.
I mean, definitely.
That's it.
Yeah. And now how I don't know much about Lost 40 Brewery aside from the fact that I loved that 90 night.
Yeah.
Want to hear a little bit
Yes.
more about beers in Arkansas, but I also want to mention something that I heard you and your dad talking about on your podcast. That the beer you gave us may actually be a higher ABV than it said on the can.
Well, so there's this thing when it comes to Arkansas is our laws are very strange. Especially when it comes to alcohol production. For a long time, my dad mentioned this on one back. So, for a long time, you couldn't brew and sell beer that was over 6%. Like state law couldn't make it. It was illegal to do. So, and we all know that there's the play that you get as a brewer or even a winemaker in your alcohol in your ABV. So I think it's like it's like 3 each way. When you taste that beer and you taste it next to another 10.5% beer, it's different in my opinion. It's different. And if I drink 3 of one and then 3 of another, well, not at the same time, of course, because I'd be on the floor at that point. But you feel different after you drink them. And I just think, 10.5 feels, I don't know, I'd have to look at the law. It might be the top level that you can have for a brewed beer beverage before you go into like a brewed malt beverage level. Or like, I think there's probably some nuances when it comes to barley wine, because a few places around here have done barley wine, but I've never seen it above like 13.5%. So it may go into just some of that as well as taxes.
Yeah, I remember there was a similar situation in Ohio. I don't remember what the percentage was, but I remember I was there right as the law was changing. It seems like a lot of states had, because these are these old antiquated, just barely post-prohibition laws that were going on there, and I think a lot of the states, like Ohio, probably saw how well Michigan was doing with craft beers, and they realized it was about time to change the laws so they could try and keep up. And they've made up for lost time. They're great. But I remember I was there one time visiting a friend of mine, and the law was just changing, and he was talking about that very thing about how this is 13% or whatever it is,
Right.
because there was a lot of speculation as to whether people were topping off that ABV a little bit.
Since this is a podcast, we should mention you were doing quotation marks in the air.
Yeah.
That's
I mean, I heard it. I heard it in my head.
Okay,
yeah, exactly.
But no, so there was that law about the 6.5%, also played into distributing, because we have about 35 different type of liquor licenses that you can have in the state.
Oh, wow.
And one of them is beer and wine only. And for a long time, if it was brewed over 6.5%, it wasn't considered beer. It was considered brewed malt beverage. So if I just had like the wine bar that I worked at just had a wine and beer license. And so you as the distributor couldn't sell me anything above 6.5%. Like Dead Guy for a long time could not be sold in those type of establishments because it's 6.6% alcohol. And it's like, what is up here? It's like a standard beer that you everywhere should have.
Yeah.
So it was like, it's gone away now, but it was there for a while, and it made ordering sometimes so hard and so limiting.
Yeah.
I can imagine. Well,
Yeah.
it sounds like a delightful beer, and I know, continuing on the dark beer trend, Captain, what's up with this delightful Duclaw?
It's really good. It's
Mhm.
it's a let's see, it is a 7%.
Mhm.
So it's still keeping that level of, a little bit higher than your average brown ale, like that one that Nutpool brought on a couple weeks ago from Fifth
Right.
Hammer.
Mhm.
That was a 5.5. So this is a 7. So it's definitely sort of probably the upper range of before it would start to be considered imperial.
Okay.
But it's funny when I looked at the taco truck. This is actually fun. We'll tell the story about Boss of the Tacos. But the taco truck, they had 3 separate kinds of pork that I could have chosen in this. They're like just basic carnitas, and then there's but the one I chose the spicy pork specifically because it was a spicy beer, and I find that those spices are pinging back and forth and complementing each other very well.
Mhm.
And it's interesting. The only other beer and this may not be entirely true. We'll check that out with Hookups next week. The only other beer that immediately comes to mind, that's what I'll say, with the same kind of profile, is the Stone Chocovesa,
Mhm.
which I think I featured a while back because that's one of my favorite seasonal beers that they do. It's really that, but that's more of a. It's more of a stout, and so therefore it's a little heartier. This is very much in the brown, but it's got a lot of character to it, and I'm really enjoying it. It's
So
funny.
when they talk about it being,
Go ahead.
well, like I say, when they talk about it being Mexican hot chocolate, do they talk about any like? There's actually like they put chili in there because that's kind of that's what makes a Mexican hot chocolate.
There's
the
that.
Mexican
There's
part is
also
having
like
that.
cinnamon usually.
Yeah.
I will take a quick look at this. Okay, it's cinnamon spice, deep chocolate, and lactose. It does not mention chilies specifically because I know that the Chocovesa definitely does. But I think they're letting. It seems like they're letting cinnamon do most of the spice work in this one.
Okay, so you're getting that nice warming note from that cinnamon
Yeah,
to kind of
yeah,
open it up a bit.
yeah. It's funny. A couple weeks ago, we were talking about the way how some brewers are more pure about how the way they do things, about how they think we make beer that tastes like beer. What was it Hill Farmstead Beer Wonder that we were talking about?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, he wrote this article where he was like throwing down the gauntlet for people who put silly adjuncts in their beers. And Duclaw is very clearly, whether they've been attacked as well, but they are very much on the other side of that argument because their slogan is "Craft be cherished, rules be damned,"
Nice.
which I think is a wonderful philosophy.
Mentioned earlier on the podcast, Duclaw's, I believe, the group that did the unicorn farts that I so lovingly enjoyed with Beervengers, and then eventually sent our dear Sourpuss. Oh no, excuse me, Mother Pucker on a misadventure to go and find beers herself.
Yeah.
So,
Well, they did a recent one. I was just looking it up because I was trying to do my last minute homework right before I got on here tonight. And they did a recent promotion in March that was a benefit for colorectal cancer.
mm,
And I think it was they had like sort of a rainbow crap on the can,
mhm.
and it's something like, "Do you give a crap about colorectal cancer?" Was the whole premise of this IPA.
Yeah.
And what they were doing was you could sign up for like this raffle thing where you could basically send them if you were selected for this thing, you would send in a stool sample to be screened for this cancer, and they would send you a free 6-pack of unicorn farts for that.
Wow.
So,
I'm in.
That's a great
I
beer.
mean,
I know this
are
is
they going to
strange
send
to
it
be
all the
talking
way to
about.
me?
Some of us are eating here, but I just think that's a wonderful,
It's a
clever,
good cause.
playful promotion to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, for a good cause.
For sure.
Very cool.
So, Belgian Babe, we haven't heard
Yep.
much about this Cherries in the Dark.
Well, you know what? I'm going to start with a confession because for some reason when I was pouring it, I was thinking it was a stout. And when I said, oh, it looks like a lager, it's probably because it is a Belgian style ale with cherries. And so I'm actually kind of glad of that because it's a lighter pour. And the cheese is not overly rich, but it's rich. And so I think a stout with it might be a little too much.
Mm.
And what I'm finding with this, I don't know if you noticed, I ran and got a new glass because I think I didn't rinse the other one out enough. So the nose I got was palm olive. So I I made a change.
It's not a standard beer scent. for the record.
Not what I was expecting. But it's a very nice sort of sweet nose, and it's it's a light and sweet ale, and then it finishes with sort of a little bit of a sour cherry. For me, that's where the cherry comes in, is at the finish. So I was curious to compare it with the Druid. When Josh was talking about the sour fruit, it's an interesting mix, and the cheese is very creamy and with a hint of sweetness. So it's kind of a nice combination. I feel like the sweet and the sour kind of balance each other out. So I'm enjoying it very much.
Yeah, that sounds good. Saint Andre is a really buttery kind of cheese. So if you've ever, it's in the Brie family.
Mm-hmm.
It's just from a specific. It's from Saint Andre, France, which is why
Okay.
or Saint Angel, not
Saint Angel,
Saint
yeah,
Angel.
yeah.
Yeah, but it's from Saint Angel, France, and so you with those kind of soft rind ripened cheese, you get that lovely big butteriness that kind of has that little bit of sweetness and that salty kind of a little bit. Does that one have any kind of any funk on it? Because some of them will have, some of the regional specific ones will have, the funkiness of cheese.
No, it's just the rind and it's very smooth. It's very not funky at all. So no.
It's a great one that, like, you do baked camembert, baked brie. You can also do like a baked Saint Andre with it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just thinking like that with like a warmed cherry sauce, pour over top, cut it with a knife.
That sounds great. Yeah. Like I say, I just
works.
saw it in the grocery store and it was a nice already soft in the case. And I was like, let's take it home and give it a try. And now, I've made a couple pilgrimages back to the same store to say, like, I must have more of this. So yeah, it's a new, it's a nice new discovery. And this is a nice beer to pair it with. Beer Wonder.
Well, I know.
Yeah.
I've got.
Now that
you
head's
down there?
finally settled.
It took a moment. We had to think about our lives. We had to have just a quick come together opportunity. But now the beer, thankfully, has settled down a little bit, and now is truly showing its grapefruit form. So this is it is a single hop varietal, sort of like a juicy IPA kind of beer. It's also, they're listing it in their tiny IPA category, so it's only at about 4.5%. So it's an easy drinker, good sessionable beer. Since we're just highlighting this one hop and they're just trying to highlight the hop, it just tastes like this Rawaka hop, which is a New Zealand style hop, very rare, made famous by our dear friends at Hill Farmstead. And in fact, one thing I love about Non Sequitur is that they do kind of code label their beers, so you probably can't see it, but on the bottom of the beer it does say Mill Farm Bed as their little nod to our friends at Hill Farmstead. So that's its code name.
Oh, cute.
Yeah. But Non Sequitur is a fun one because they're contract brewers, or at least they started as contract brewers. And one of the things that they do is that they list on every can where this was actually brewed. And so this was brewed at Keg and Lantern, which is a brewery that we've talked about here in the county of Kings.
Yeah, I think that's where they did their Black is Beautiful beer also.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and they've done a couple things around there, but I did want to make sure I highlight them this week because we just got an announcement from them that they are going to be opening up their location very soon. So Non Sequitur is going to show up in Bushwick, likely in July is their current plan, and it will be not only an active brewery, but also a place where you can grab a beer, so tap room, as well as an event space. And so they're known for their IPAs, and this is no exception. It's all just a nice, easy drinking grapefruit. Not a lot of that astringency, very fruity up front. Just the slightest bit of that drying at the very, very end. juicy, light. Really, most of the flavor and the aroma is coming on your nose. So it's when you sniff it, you get most of what you're going to get, and then it dries your mouth out just a tiny bit at the end. So it's a good, easy, sessionable drinker, and a good way to highlight the Rawaka hop. So
Excellent.
now I know, Josh, I am, as folks know, I am deeply in love with IPAs, and I will try as many different kinds as I can. Particular fondness for the New England style IPA. I understand this is not your idea of a good time. You want to tell us? You want to tell us your side of the story here?
Well, so for me, I think it goes all the way back to I'm just a picky eater. So, and I have never done the test, but I really feel like I'm one of those people that is the super taster.
Mm-hmm.
You know, can taste some of those woody weird things that other people can't. I'm also a non-cilantro guy, so cilantro is a soap for me, rather than a delicious topping to almost anything nowadays. So I think it kind of goes back to that, where when I get into an IPA and even some of those really light session ones, I get I have a hard time with the citrus. I usually don't get citrus. I get the piney. I get the I'm walking through, the Ponderosa Pine Forest,
Right.
and then I face planted into a tree, and I've got sap all over my mouth. For a lot of them, that's kind of how
you've just recited my new favorite beer, for the record. But go ahead.
Yeah, but so for me, that's how I get a lot of them. A lot of them present to me on my palate, and there are very few and far between where I can be like, okay, I can sit back and I can drink maybe two of these, and one of them is the Tommyknocker Black IPA. If you've ever had that,
I like the black
super
IPAs.
delicious.
Yeah. I haven't had that.
Black.
What's Tommyknocker? Where are they from?
Tommyknocker's out of Colorado.
Okay.
So if you've ever,
I don't think it's made it this far east.
Oh man, if you've ever been to Colorado and you've driven out to the mountains to ski, that's I-70. As you're going into the I-70 Valley, one of those first towns right there is where Tommyknocker is. So it's still a full town. It's not a ghost town or anything, but it's a great stop off if you're ever going out to the Colorado mountains to ski if we ever can again after all this mess. So that one, and then there was one from Dixie Brewing out of New Orleans. They had a lighter hazy IPA, kind of like what you're describing. That I'm like, okay, I could have one. On the second one, it's going to start to wear on my palate because those sit really heavy on me, like a lot of people say stouts do. So for me, it's one of those beers that like I've tried. I mean, Lost 40 one year did. They do new beer releases every Monday, or they used to before COVID hit, and they were just like 5-gallon boils that they would let their brewers just experiment with the heck out of. Well, they took their base IPA for a month, and then they focused a hop. For each one, and I went every week. I dutifully drank the beer, and it's intellectually, I get it. Like I get why you love IPAs. I get the play that they can have, the variety that is there, that is available to the brewer with all these different kinds of hops. It just all comes back to a pine tree for me. And the worst ones are a pine. Like it. Sometimes I get pine sol, like actual. It reminds me of a clean floor with pine sol. And I know all the IPA drinkers are sitting there like, I am never going to listen to this guy talk about beer again.
Honestly, I'm kind of with you a little bit. I think more so with the West Coast IPAs. I don't know if any of the New England IPAs have made it. I mean, I imagine the hazy IPAs are so popular. You must have gotten a few of them in Arkansas by now.
Yeah, we've had a couple, and also our breweries are doing them as well.
Yeah,
and so like I get, so I still like it. Still kind of hits me that like I get the citrus is there, but it's still just that kind of pininess.
Well, I think that's a nice little preview to segue into what we're going to talk about. Now, I realize that Josh has listened to a few of these, but neither he nor maybe some of the new people who are coming to us who are listeners of Josh's podcast. Once we decided to call ourselves the Beervengers, we sort of reverse engineered how it would be. We gave ourselves Beervenger names, and when you're watching a superhero well, there are all two different kinds of superhero movies. There's the kind that are part of the continuing story, and then there are the ones that go back to the beginning of when that character became that character, when they first put on the uniform for the first time. And in the world of comic books, that is known as the
Origin story.
That's right. It's known as the origin story. And so now we would actually like to sort of find out how Josh became. Well, actually, Josh, tell you the truth. This is part of your origin story right now, since you don't have a Beervenger name yet. This is
Right.
the last chapter in your origin story. And where we usually start these is, do you remember when your first positive or negative or whatever interaction with beer first started?
So my first interaction with beer was a negative. My dad homebrewed when I was growing up. We got him he got a homebrewing kit, loved it. The thing was, he cooked in the house, and it made the house smell like the worst sour smell that I could ever imagine. Like the smell to me was just like the worst thing ever. I would run out of the house and be like, I'm leaving, bye. And I'm like, 7 or 8 at this point. I'd go find lotion and I would smell the lotion rather than, kind of smelling the beer that was brewing in the house. So like my first connotation with beer was actually a negative one. We ended up buying him a turkey fryer so he could, cook out of the house or brew out of the house. And then as I was growing up, alcohol was always kind of around. Cocktail culture with my parents and my dad or my mom's family. I helped out. Don't tell anyone. I helped out behind the bar since I was about 6. I've known how to make a gin and tonic
Excellent
for
job.
a long time. I mean, gin and tonic in a tip jar, and my grandfather would always prime the tip jar with like a $20 bill. So I was always there helping out. And so alcohol was never one of those things that was like, ooh, I need to go get into this when I get old enough. It's the forbidden fruit. So I, when I kind of got into, teenage years, I was an athlete, and my sister was like, you may not want to get into the alcohol scene. You don't want to get in trouble. You don't want to, lose any possible athletic stuff you may have. So I never really got into it. And I made the decision. I was like, you know what? I'm going to wait till I'm 21. It's not a big deal. It's not something that I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got to go get this right now. So I went to a very strict college based on my choice, because I'm an educator by trade, and they had one of the best local education programs around. But I just so happened to turn 21 while I was doing an overseas campus in Italy. And so food and wine had always been a thing for me. I thought about going to culinary school for a while, and I just I had this feeling like there's something magic about when food and wine can come together. I'd seen it from parties at my parents' house. You kind of read about it when you're reading into food. Like as a kid, I read cookbooks rather than fiction books. I still love to cook to this day. But my sister came over for one of my free travels, which was my birthday week. And we went to Venice and did kind of a whole Venice and Milan trip. And on my 21st birthday, I had probably first beer that I can really say like I remember drinking a beer, and it was a Guinness. Guinness was my first beer. It's my dad drank it. I'd seen it around for a long time, and I just kind of loved it. Tried a gin and tonic too, because that's the family drink. Realized I'm not a gin guy. So, but I also had an experience with wine while I was there. And on one of our podcasts with my friend Maggie, we talk about our first like food and wine pairing experience. And so I kind of go into that where I just had this aha moment when it came to wine. That's where I started my wine journey. But beer was a little bit different for me. I mean, Guinness was good. I didn't really kind of get into it until later, where I started kind of more in my personal journey of getting into the food and the alcohol industry. So I started doing it. Like I said, Lost 40 was one of our breweries that opened up around here. And I just went as a kind of a ritual on Mondays. I'd go have the fresh cut right after work and kind of got into it that way. I'd been trying to, other little beers here and there, with friends, but it was mostly for me. It was mostly wine and cocktail, wine and liquor was kind of
When did
my
Lost
gateway.
40 start up?
They started up in 2000. Oh, geez, let me look it up real quick. They started, I think, in the 2010s. Is when
Okay,
they
so
started.
like they've been good. It sounds like they got in pretty early when craft beer started taking off.
Yeah, especially in Arkansas, they were the second or third craft brewery in and around Arkansas. We've had one for a long time that was called um, it's called Diamond Bear that we've talked about before,
Mhm.
and but Lost 40 came up. They were kind of one of the first ones to really like hit it hard, and so they're backed by a local one of our local big food and beverage groups. So they kind
Yeah.
of hit it hard and went full bore into it, and jump production for a long time. And they kind of really they were the first, I guess you could say, like modern craft beer place in Central Arkansas. But so I started going there kind of as a ritual, and that kind of really got me into it. I guess you could say the beers that got me into beer were Oktoberfests. Love a good Oktoberfest. I cannot
Mhm.
wait
Those are great.
for well, now it's like August when they start hitting, maybe
Right.
a little earlier.
It's true.
Whenever
It's
I
true.
see Marzen on a menu and I'm going for beer, I'm like, yes, I'm gonna go for that one.
Mhm.
So that was kind of my gateway beer that got me into really good big craft beer. And ever since then, I've just been kind of keep going. And I worked. So, like I said, I'm a teacher by trade. It's kind of one of the things I just do naturally. Talk about things, kind of can take big concept ideas and break it down. So I was like, okay, I have this itch for food and wine. So I started working as a third job at this point at a local wine bar one night a week.
Hmm.
I'd go work Saturday nights, and
For any of our international listeners, in America, teachers have to take extra jobs because that's how undervalued they are.
yeah, I
That's
mean,
true.
yeah, it was, it was one of those things. But for me, it was like, okay, I'm excited to go to this job because I had gone to their wine tastings, which they did on Monday nights. So I would go from Lost 40 drinking beer, and then I would go to Crush, the wine bar I worked at, and have, do a wine flight and just, I'd get Monday night was my hammered night. Tuesday was an easy day at school, let me tell you.
Mm.
So and after a while, the owner and I kind of sparked up a friendship. He's like, hey, my Saturday person just left. Do you want to work here just one day a week on Saturdays? I'm like, awesome. Yeah, sure. Now, you may think, okay, how does a little wine bar in North Little Rock, Arkansas, get into your beer life? He has been voted for best beer list at a lot of places. He has about 40. He runs about 40 different canned or bottled beers on his wine bar menu
Wow.
at a time. So he knows that the lady may come in for the wine, the guy may not want wine, he might want some beer, or opposite. So he always wants to have stuff for people to go. So in that, I got to start trying stuff, and he allowed me to taste with distributors and kind of get into it. So I had a shift in my job, and I was taking some tests for wine called the Quartermaster Sommelier exams, and I took one in Montana, and I didn't pass, which doesn't matter. Got me to Montana, which is beautiful country, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Ever get up there, definitely give it a try. Well, and then after I was there, I sparked up a friendship with one of the guys that was there, and I was like, hey, if anything ever comes up at the place where you work, it's called the Yellowstone Club. It's like, let me know. High end ski resort, actually a private ski resort that has multiple restaurants on it. He's like, oh yeah, I'll let you know. Well, he mailed me, and I got offered a job to be a floor sommelier out in Montana.
Nice.
So it was like, okay, I've got to try my hand at the food and wine beverage and the food and wine industry. I'm going to just jump in 100%, quit my job, moved out there, realized while it was beautiful, I didn't have my tribe there. I didn't have anybody that I really knew. So I decided to move back to Arkansas. I got back in the education game, and my dad and I, we love doing this kind of stuff, talking to people about food and wine and beer, and then the food piece. So we started a kind of a volunteer company called Argenta Acquired Tastings, because that was the neighborhood that I lived in North Little Rock that I absolutely love. And what we would do is we would create pairing experiences for people. So if you could hire us and say, okay, I want a 6-course wine paired dinner, and we would do it all for you. We also donated these events to local charities, whereas actually where we got most of our exposure. So we would do these, and we did around the world in 8 beers. We did a 3-course dinner with 3 pairings at each course, to kind of show that diversity. So we fell in love with this kind of work. I've talked about the interesting laws we have here in Arkansas.
Yes.
And especially liquor licenses. And we could not figure out how to make it a legal business without having a brick and mortar space. So we ended up, stopping it. And
how long were you doing it until you hit that wall?
Doing it maybe about a year.
Okay.
Year and a half. So we had given away 4 or 5 events, and we did maybe 1 or 2 paid events. So it came down to the cooking and then the actual purchasing of the alcohol and selling it, technically, just became kind of an interesting, a problem we couldn't solve without a lot more money behind us to figure it out. So we decided, it's not worth it. It's fun, but it's not, we can't really make it viable right now. So that was about 3 years ago that stopped. Ever since then, I was a big podcast guy. Loved listening to the podcast. I love listening to spoken word, books on tape, all that kind of stuff. And I kept telling my dad, I was like, Dad, we should totally do this. We should do what we did in a smaller format on podcasts, because I think people would really enjoy hearing and learning about it, but also the pairing piece. Because a lot of times you don't know, like working in a restaurant and working at a wine bar, I mean, unless you study it, you don't know what goes with what. So you're just kind of blindly guessing. And we don't have a lot of full-time sommeliers or cicerones in restaurants here in Arkansas. So I was like, this would be awesome. We could totally do this, talk about it. I'm hounding him for about 2.5 years about this. Like, Dad, we should do this. Dad, we should do this. Dad, we should do this.
And then there was a pandemic.
And then one of the good things that come out of the pandemic was this, because my dad and my mom love to travel. And I love to travel too. I've been to multiple different wine regions. We traveled as a kid. My sister in September will reach visiting all 7 continents. So
Nice.
So we're a big travel family. And my mom used to work for Delta, so she still has the flight benefits. So they're gone a week or 2, 8 months out of the year, just because they can. They're retired, having all that fun, but now they can't. And my dad's bored. And I'm like, this is it. This is it.
There sure is.
And so I finally, I bug him for 2 or 3 months. I was like, Dad, we could totally do this. It'd give you something to do, and it's fun. We can hang out. We can start recording stories together. And that was also kind of a background thing for me is, I've had, grandparents and those kind of people die. And I was like, man, I miss having their stories on tape. So I was like, this gives me a good thing where I can sit down with my dad, get some of the stories. If you've ever listened to the podcast, you're here, we'll get into story. Dad will tell a story or something, or I'll tell one. But getting those down and recorded.
Could I just say, I rather enjoyed the story of his exploding beer when he first tried to homebrew. And when he said, if you hadn't hit the ceiling, you haven't tried to homebrew.
Yeah, Mom was so mad. She was so mad. So mad. And we at that time we were living in Kansas City, and we had a basement.
Yep.
And they were thinking, oh, why don't we should finish the basement, because that was a big thing back in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yep.
Was if you had a basement, you finished it. And then Dad blew up his beer down there, and Mom's like, nope, not spending that money.
But it's not now, and now you have the story recorded thanks to the podcast.
Yeah.
So that's great.
Yeah, and so that was one of the big things. But also, it's to get it out there. Like I said, I'm a natural teacher. I love talking about this kind of stuff. I love doing pairings. I love food. I love creating food. I love creating those experiences for people, or helping them to create those experiences. And I was like, this is fantastic for what we have now. Since we can't do this in person, why not do it in another format? And so we've jumped in full bore. Let's see. This is going to be released on a Monday. So the Thursday, because we release on Thursday every week, that will be our 44th episode. So we haven't even been going a year yet, but we've been just jumping straight in, having all the mistakes that you do when you start a podcast.
Oh yeah, we know that. We're a little familiar.
Well, and for us, we do these pairings, and if you've listened to our recent episodes, you see, like, we're pretty regimented. We have 3 things with our food. Man, at the beginning, it was like we had like 6 or 7 things each, plus the drink. And we were like, how do we fit this in around about an hour? And what we realized, we're like, okay, we're spending a whole bunch of money making these big, beautiful plates for 2 of us. And most of the food's left over. And so we're like, okay, we gotta pare this down and kind of make it work. And so that's kind of, how we got here. And I love it. I'm very excited to see, kind of the expansion of what we've done, seeing new countries pop up that are listening to us.
That's always crazy. Yeah, like, who's listening in the Netherlands?
Yeah, like at one point I looked at, I was like, Lithuania, Bangladesh, what? We got an episode in Bangladesh? How is this happening? And then chatting with people through Instagram about it, and it's fantastic. And I love, if we're starting here, it can only go up. And
it sounds to me, Josh, that from listening to a few of the episodes, that your dad's enjoying it just as much as you are. That he sees that, like, oh yeah, this was a great idea you had.
Yeah, he finally. So my dad is one of those ones. He's got to think about it. He's an engineer. So
mine too.
Engineers, you know that they've got to sit and marinate on it for a while, and sit and chew and chew and chew and do run all the scenarios in his head. Because before he retired, he was working with a division that would basically say, okay, this power plant wants to join our big power grid here. Let's run all the scenarios to see what's going to happen if this blows up, if one line goes down, and so that was what he did for 3 or 4 years before he retired. So he still has that mindset. But I'm super glad he's done it, and he loves it. He really does enjoy it, and he's our editor. So he also loves that meticulous side of it, to kind of go through. Now when he's out of town, I edit, and that may be why it's not as crisp or clean as him, because I'm still working and he's retired. So, but it's been a great experience. And, heck, I would have never met you guys if we would have never done this before. And
that's true.
All this fantasticness going on.
Yeah, we're a little behind you. This is episode 31 we're doing right now. So, but
we've definitely taken some tips from you guys.
Yeah. It's funny. I've cherry picked a few of your episodes here and there. Somehow I managed to get both of the ones where you mentioned, I don't know if you mentioned us more than twice, but both, like, a couple of times when you talked about us at the end, it was like, oh, that's what a nice surprise. Yeah. Well, here's the funny thing. Like, so are you actually teaching in a school right now?
So I work at a school. I'm not currently teaching. I'm the director of assessment and technology now. I'm technology kind of nerd when it comes to teaching. So I'm not actually teaching, but I am in school every day, and especially right now because it's testing.
Physically in the school.
And what grade level are you, Josh? What grade levels?
So our school runs kindergarten through 8th grade.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
But have you been, was there a point of the pandemic where you weren't going into the building so much?
Yeah. So we shut down 2 days before our spring break last year. Oof. And they were thinking, oh, okay, we'll just kind of knock it out. we'll have the week of spring break. We'll be out the next week. And then we didn't come back until August.
Okay.
And so we were out all the way through the end of kind of the middle-ish of August. And we've actually been back in the building since then. We have a lot of different protocols in place for safety, groups not crossing, 6 feet apart, all that jazz, masks. And we do have virtual kids as well.
The reason I asked that is because my life is almost completely virtual still all this time later right now. And I every time I discover a new podcast, I have to just do sampling because all the time when I used to listen to podcasts don't exist anymore.
Trains.
It was either
Yeah.
either while I was in public transportation or going to the gym. And now it's like it's very hard for me to listen to a podcast if I don't have some other mindless task to occupy me.
Yeah.
But so that otherwise I probably would have listened to more of your episodes by now.
Right. And that's one of the things, like, we talk about it a lot in our podcast. It's like, yes, we understand that podcasts are, for lack of a better term, a mindless listen. You know, you're doing something else, you're driving, you're walking, you're in a car. But we talk a lot about, so ours, you can sit down and like do it.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
sit with us, listen to it, kind of make an event out of it, because it's so hard with the pandemic to, have that sense of, well, I'm doing something fun, but I'm still in my house.
Yeah.
And so we try and have that kind of thing to where you can listen along to us. I actually have a friend of mine who listens every episode. Him and his family got together and did like our champagne episode, which was right around the holidays, and they bought everything and sat and they talked. He told me, like, we opened the bottles, listened to you guys, and then we ended up talking too much, so they turned us off. But which I mean, I get.
Is that part of the
when you're getting into sparkling wine, you kind of get into that.
Is that part of the reason why you announce before every show exactly what's going to be on the next show?
Yeah,
That's
so
smart.
we want to give you that kind of, hey, okay, well, I can go buy this and be ready. Now we don't release the pairings out front anymore because we like to think about it a little bit more. But we're really good on Instagram about putting out what the pairings are.
Oh, cool.
So that they're out there the same day of release. So if you're coming home, or if you're thinking about doing it the next day, Friday night, your Friday night thing, all those are there for you, so you can kind of build your plate as you go and be prepared to sit down and listen with us. And
Yeah.
so it's been lots of fun.
What I appreciated, and I mentioned this when I was here before, that you talk about some great beers, wines, and different products, and they're Arkansas based, and I think, oh gosh, that's too bad, I'm not there. But what I like is that you say, if you're not in this area, you can go get this and play along with us. And so that's really nice. So you can sort of find the version in your area that's comparable to what I could find down in Little Rock.
Right. Yeah. We really love supporting our local, especially our local breweries around here.
Sure.
And we actually had to have a discussion at one point. We're like, okay, we both can't do local beers. If one of us is doing a local beer, somebody's got to do a more nationally distributed beer. But yeah,
Right.
we do want to make sure that you can, whether, we understand as Arkansans that sometimes distributing sucks.
Mm-hmm.
What you get is not everything that you want. So we want,
Right.
in keeping that you want to have a good experience, we try and help find those things that may be more widely distributed or that your
Right.
local brewery is doing.
Right.
So you can still support
Right.
them.
If it's a similar style,
win.
then that's, similar
Yeah.
enough that you can pair it with something.
Right.
Well,
All right. Go ahead.
one of the things I love, and the fact that you've like the way that a person can actually join in on this experience, I just think is so magical, and that's such a cool thing, especially in the time that we're all so apart. But the other thing that I think is so cool about what you guys do is the way that you have of describing what you're tasting. Food is not an auditory experience usually. I mean, the crunches are nice and stuff,
Right.
but the tasting is something that you guys use words to really paint that picture. And I'm just curious. I often find that people struggle to talk about food. And for folks at home who might be like, I don't know how to describe this thing, I don't know how to describe this wine or beer or whatever they're drinking. What do you suggest people do if they're just trying to figure out ways to talk about what they're eating or drinking and tasting?
So when it comes to drinking, There are a lot of things out there called wheels. So there's a beer wheel that's out there.
Mhm.
There's a wine wheel that's out there. And what it does is it starts you in the middle and it starts you really general. It says so for
Mhm.
wine, let's say you're drinking and you taste fruity. Okay, so then you're okay. I'm going to this wedge now where it says fruity, and then you can take another drink and then it has more descriptive after that, and so you can start thinking about it to kind of figure it out that way. And then
Mhm.
honestly, when it comes to food, I kind of pull from my wine and beer and spirits knowledge. You know,
Sure.
if I'm tasting this here, okay, I should kind of taste this here. And
Yeah.
just learning to think while you eat or drink is a big thing. You know, in the education when we call it metacognition, so thinking about your thinking. And
Right.
it's like a muscle. You have to practice doing it, and you're going to sound weird when you start. I
Mhm.
know I sound so weird sometimes because I will describe taste as color, and people are like, "What are you
Mhm.
talking about?" It's like, "Oh, Syrah, big bold Syrah to me tastes purple." And it's the weirdest thing, but you
Mhm.
just have to kind of just dig in and say, okay, this is what I'm tasting, this is what I'm feeling, this is how I'm experiencing this wine or this beer, this food. Even, you know, beef, does it taste really beefy? Does it taste like grassy? Does it taste, what are you tasting in it? And getting that thinking about it is kind of where you have to start to just give yourself that language. And nobody's language is the same. So,
Mhm.
and nobody, just like nobody's palate's the same. So you and I could be drinking the same beer, and you may say, oh, it's so bright citrusy, and I'm like, well, there's a little bit of citrus there, but I'm getting a lot of pine cone here, or those type of things. So it's really just saying, okay, forget you, this is what I'm
Mhm.
tasting, this is just
Yeah.
how I'm
Mhm.
going to talk about it, and just being open and honest to do that. Once you get into that abandon of it, you just start to kind of go off about it. And the more you taste things, the more, and you think about it, you'll start to get that more refined discussion piece of it.
Very good. All right. Well, I don't know what color this is, but I'm actually ready for a second pour. I'm.
Oh my goodness.
Oh,
It hasn't been cellaring for long, at least where I live. So I'm not gonna ask Huck to play that song. He's done enough without actually speaking this week already. But I feel like he's here nonetheless. But since our guest is seeing our world here, I did want to have one beer that's hyper local, and this is from Big Alice. In
Oh.
fact, Beer Wonder, you and Belgian Babe were with me when I picked this
Oh
up.
dear.
It is
Yes.
called A Ship in Harbor.
Oh,
It is
Okay.
an aged stout from Big Alice. It's a
mm.
special one, so it's got one of these things on top of it. And there we go. We always know that always adds a little extra time to the pour. But
It's
there
just
we go. All right. It's a
different kind
10.5
of crack
percenter.
there.
Yeah.
Oh, bless it.
The 2020 vintage.
Oh boy.
that's a pretty
Literally
color.
pouring
Yeah.
motor oil right there.
I want that beer in my hand right now. Like
I
And
that's
feel like
that's my
that one
jam.
they
yeah,
may not allow to get cross state lines, I'm afraid.
So
No,
we're
not
gonna have to
unless we
just
were,
bootleg it.
using your dad's Delta miles and packing it in the checked
Yeah.
luggage.
there you go.
I do
It's
have a
not a big
big
head
thing
on
I can
that
carry a
either.
case of wine.
You're right. It's not. Well,
Yeah.
it's an imperial stout, so often those are muted, and
Ah,
it's also
okay.
it's even though it hasn't been aging here long, it does say, if you can see that, vintage 2020 right there on the label.
I
Oh,
see.
Yeah, I
okay.
I
guess
don't actually
it's
see it, but I
no,
believe
you
you.
can't. But
Yeah,
believe it. Yeah,
I believe
I'll
you.
save it and show it to you later.
I'm gonna
So
have to bring my big wine. So I travel a lot when I go to wine regions, and I
Mhm.
actually have a big like rolly that can hold a case of wine in it,
Ooh.
in like
Nice.
shipping box and foam and everything, and it's got wheels. So I may have to come up there and
I think you might.
take
I,
some beer back.
I was recently starting to research that because since I've been double vaccinated and my father has as well. My dad's in Ohio,
Okay.
and I haven't seen him for over a year. And I wound up. I am actually flying Delta. Not that there's any place for Delta. Not they're giving us anything here.
Fly Delta.
Yeah. They If you like,
I mean,
if you like, we get no piece of it, but you can.
I just flew Delta from my field reporting in
Yeah.
Wisconsin, and I had a fantastic time with them. So we seem to be a pro Delta crew
I
right
wonder
now.
if they're like we actually happened to mention them last week because it was the 420 episode, and they have Sweetwater 420 available on the in-flight, which
That's
Huck
true.
mentioned it last week. Maybe they're the only ones who are doing really good nonstop flights these days, because it's funny because I used to be able to fly nonstop from LaGuardia to Dayton. That's where my dad is. Could fly to Dayton nonstop on American, but now the closest I can get to a nonstop is flying Delta to Cincinnati.
Yeah,
so
I mean that's one of Delta's old hubs, so that's why you get a nice quick flight there.
And I'm sure that the thing with American not doing their nonstop to Dayton anymore just has to do with how they've been cutting back the last year.
So are you planning to bring some sort of alcohol carrying luggage?
What I did was it's one of those things where I signed up for the the deal where if you signed up for the free credit card, you get a free checked bag. As long as you remember to cancel it within a year, that sort of thing. Then they start charging you for the card. So I did that specifically because I'm only staying there a week. I could have managed with a carry-on bag, but I did that specifically so I could take a checked bag to bring Ohio beer back with me.
Nice.
That's
So a trick. I'll tell you a packing trick. You know those like square sound reducing foam things they sell?
Yeah.
Like for cheap. Buy like Amazon yourself a bunch of those. They don't weigh much of anything. They compact really well, but they've got with the V cut, it's going to give you actually good support if you kind of sandwich them to pack something in that, so it won't kind of move around. It kind of gives you that hard foam feeling without paying for like hard cut foam.
And then when I get back from my trip, I can use it to upgrade my home studio.
There you go.
Multi-purpose.
Reduce, reuse, and recycle. Well, speaking of our friends at Big Alice, I did want to throw in a quick plug for a weekend beer adventure that is starting, and only appropriate that our friends Required Tastings are here, because our good friends at Big Alice Brewing are hosting a virtual beer and cheese pairing with our friends at Malt and Mold, which is a local cheese shop.
They're great.
Their Gramercy location. And so if you head over to Big Alice's website, you can purchase a pack, and you can head over to either Big Alice or I believe it's or you can head over to the Gramercy location for Malt and Mold, pick it up, and then one of their beer tenders, Mary Hannah, who is a certified Cicerone and a just delightful human being, will be hosting a virtual pairing. No news on what you're drinking, but we love to support two small businesses and love to have to be able to support them on a week that we've got someone who does pairings.
Yeah,
that's
awesome.
For pro here.
Very timely.
By the way, Malt and Mold is a fantastic name for a shop. So I'm
guessing most definitely
a cheese and beer shop.
Oh yes, 100%.
That's a beautiful name for a shop.
Yeah, and they have a wild selection. I have not the location that I went to was their Lower East Side location, and their owner was there. And I guess technically I wasn't supposed to drink a beer in the shop because they didn't have the right licensure, but we had a great time together. Chatted up the whole thing. He had a bunch of really cool cheeses there. Can't speak more highly of them than they've got going on. So check them out. Grab some cheese, grab some beer, and join Mary Hannah, who is amazing. And let her tell you what you should be pairing.
Excellent.
And as long as we're talking about weekend beer news on Big Alice, I just noticed it on Instagram a couple of days ago. We talked a while back about how they're opening up a new facility in the Finger Lakes, and in Geneva, New York, on the shores of beautiful Seneca Lake. They are opening on May 1st. They're having their grand opening on May 1st.
Wow! So just days after this podcast comes out. That's exciting.
Or days
before.
Days after we're talking. Because this podcast comes out on the May 3rd.
Yes, exactly.
That's right.
Even though I told Josh it was May 2nd.
The wonders of technology.
I know.
I was like,
when you said Monday, I got it.
I was trying to do the math in my head. I didn't look on a physical calendar. Like, I think that's the 2nd. Belgian Babe corrected me. Yes, it was the 3rd. But
may I give a shout out to hopefully a weekend beer to be, as we do Beervengers to be, because we are here because I am a friend of Josh's aunt, or he probably says Aunt Tina, And she and I are in the borough of Queens in the neighborhood of Woodside, and Solid State continues to be a lovely craft beer bar here in the neighborhood. We have met there a few times, and they're, taking temperatures as you go in, making sure you're in your isolated areas, and it's very safe and very wonderful. So she and I are now both thoroughly vaccinated, so I look forward to going there again and spending more time and supporting Solid State. They are a great local business.
That's right. By the time this comes out, you and I will both be past our fully vaccinated date.
I didn't actually invite you, but you could come too.
I didn't say I wanted to. I was just saying,
I'm just saying,
I'm saying that's your day. My day's the day before. I actually
Yeah.
think I'll go do something with Beer Wonder without you on the day of my vaccination.
Oh,
So,
I walked into that one. I sure did.
Yeah, what are you doing on Friday afternoon, Beer Wonder?
Go!
I mean, we'll figure something out. And Josh,
We
if
will,
you can
yeah.
hop on a Delta flight over, you are more than welcome to hang out
Yeah,
with us.
yeah,
I got a
I
guest
mean,
room.
I might have to get on a flight right now.
There you go.
Now, one thing I don't know if we have other weekend beer news, but we do have a weekend Beervengers thing to do, which is I think Josh needs a name.
Yeah.
A Beervenger name. We've heard a lot about his story. Now, I had one question about Italy, but we can get to that in a moment. I think we have to like sort of. I will. No, actually, I want to ask you this now because I'm just curious. So you said you turned 21 in Italy.
Mm-hmm.
How long had you been in Italy at that point?
I had been in Italy for 2.5 months.
Okay, so you had
And I was
decided since you'd waited that long, even though that meant because you were legal, if my math is right, Italy isn't 21, right? So you were legal from the time you got there in Italy,
right?
But
Yeah.
you had so much settled yourself on that being your symbolic. Now I'm an alcohol drinking person. You decided to wait the 2.5 months for the ceremony.
Yeah. Besides the one time when we were in a little like back alley restaurant, because I would wander around and find those kind of places. Large group of us sitting down, have a fantastic dinner, waiting for the check. Waiter comes out with these glasses, like a tray full of, like old fashioned glasses with this like light amber liqueur in it, and he sets it down. And you get that wonderful waft of almond, and it was house-made amaretto rather than dessert.
Oh.
And because of the people I was with,
wow,
and some of the situations of the university I was at, rather than sitting there for 2 hours and drinking it, I got everybody out of there by being the first one just to shoot it all the way down, just so that we could get out of there. But yeah, so basically,
Okay.
I waited for my choice. Yeah.
It's you won't be surprised to hear that drinking age is factored into a number of origin stories.
I bet.
Yes.
Okay, so yeah.
So thinking a little bit about what you've told us you like and some of the kind of interesting funky flavors, some of the good deep rich malts, I was curious. So how do you feel? What is your take on Belgium? I know we have a Belgian thing going on, but I have a different direction potentially to go here. Okay. What's your take on Belgians, Josh?
I love Belgian beers.
Okay.
I love them all the way from a great Saison to put a quad or something really big bowl in front of me. Love them all. Love the big malt, big yeast profile that they get. I love them.
Nice, because I'm curious. We have had plenty of discussions of Belgians. We have our Globe Hopper who enjoys
and very much into stouts as well.
And very much into stouts, yeah. But for me, I was thinking we haven't had anyone represent for more of the uniqueness that comes out of our yeast friends, which would be esters and phenols. So I was wondering if there's something to be done in that characteristic. But I'd want to make sure that those are flavorings and those are elements that sort of jive with you.
Yeah, well, I mean, and esters and phenols are big when it comes to wine as well.
And also we could factor the region in here, possibly. That could be a factor in the name as well. The Arkansas thing.
Or the Southern thing.
Yeah, I mean, if we needed a nickname for your dad, we'd just call him the Arkansas Traveler. But
yes, that's
I like it.
That's the easy one. So next time he comes on, he's already got his name already.
Yeah.
There we go.
See,
This is where
clearly, Huck is the best one of all of us at getting this discussion going.
Huck is always very good at these kind of things.
Like usually, we talk about it for about 5 minutes, but usually the first thing that comes out of his mouth is the ones we wind up using.
Yeah.
So what about I mean, you ask questions, maybe fill out a theory you got running around there,
or maybe start an Instagram contest.
I was gonna say I could text Huck.
What should it be?
Yes. Well, thinking through it, we've got no, it's a dark beer, so there's
I'm thinking Southern Tier, and if something could, like, not Southern beer, Southern.
Well, it doesn't have to be Southern. I
No,
grew
it
up
doesn't.
most
It
of my
doesn't.
life in the Midwest, so
Oh,
Yeah, really?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
yeah, Kansas. I grew up most of my life around Kansas City.
Okay.
Ah, all right.
Home of Perennial.
And Boulevard.
Oh yeah, Boulevard.
Excellent.
Yeah. We featured a few of the Perennial stuff on here. They, in fact, do you ever order stuff from Tavor? I don't know if they're allowed to deliver to Arkansas.
They're probably not allowed to deliver here.
They're basically they're like a company that will send you things that you can't get where you live.
Oh,
but some
states
states are so protective of their home breweries, they don't want that to happen.
See,
like
in
Ohio,
they're not protected of the breweries. They're protected of people not drinking. That's what it is around here.
Oh, there's that kind of puritanical.
Well,
thing
yeah, because we still have wet and dry counties.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
I think I knew that. I lived in Memphis for a couple of years.
Yeah, because right across the river in Memphis, if you go just north enough, you're in a dry county, and there's probably more dry counties than wet counties in Arkansas.
But and also growing up in southern Ohio, I was really near where there were strange borders there as well, because Cincinnati was incredibly puritanical. I mean, probably though that attitude is probably still there, but they had so many obscenity kind of laws and blue laws that apparently right over the river in Kentucky things were crazy because that's where everyone went to have fun. Well, in fact, do you know what Larry Flint, Two Life Crew, and Robert Mapplethorpe all have in common?
No,
they were all prosecuted for obscenity in Cincinnati.
Oh my gosh. That's crazy. Yeah, we still have blue laws where you can't buy alcohol on a Sunday unless it comes from a brewery. You know.
Well, I should ask you: do you have any ideas for names, Josh? Have you thought about this at all?
I don't. You know, I wasn't a big superhero guy growing up, so I'm open to anything it could be.
Well, for me, I'm thinking now because also you have this innate ability to break things down. There, you can pair things up for people. You can really create these things. So there's like there's like a genius quality. There's like a mastermind feeling here. So a part of me wants you to be something like the Esther genius, or the Belgian Babe's got a good one.
I don't know. It's just a thought.
It's only my beard hair that's red.
Okay, because I was thinking the educator earlier, and then I'm just looking and I'm like, wait, it's kind of red. The red educator. I don't know.
Yeah, that's
spitballing. Spitballing. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Everything up here is either gray or just dirty.
Dirty.
That's funny because my stuff pretty much stayed brown on top of. This is where I got all the aging.
I've got two white stripes that run down, so my beard is, I call it white stripes.
I was gonna say like the band. Nice.
The fearless phenologist. The champion. The.
I mean, you also have the pairing idea that you could play with.
The pairing idea, yeah, interesting.
Ooh.
Thrown in the pairing.
The something pairer. Or the pairing.
We'll figure out something. It may not be before the end of the podcast, but we will figure out something.
We will. We'll definitely. If worst case scenario, we'll put it to an Instagram vote.
Yeah.
And if people want to follow, if they want to learn more about Acquired Tastings, perhaps on the Instagrams, where should they look?
So on Instagram, we are at Acquired Tastings, and we're on all the podcast platforms. Instagram is really the best place to follow us. You can follow us on Facebook. We're Acquired Tastings on Facebook. Twitter is basically just a byproduct of what we put on Instagram. So Instagram is really our big thing. That's where we'll post all the stories, and we'll archive the stories for all of our pairings and wines and beers and everything that we do there.
The photographs are gorgeous. I don't know who takes your photos, but they're really beautiful.
Well, thank you. That's
makes
hey.
Makes me hungry every time I scroll through, for sure.
Well, that's that's kind of the downfall. Like all my friends that listen, they're like, okay, I can't listen to you after lunch. If I'm walking around doing work after lunch, I can't listen after. I just get too hungry. I'm like, I'm sorry. Thank you that we have good descriptions, but sorry. You do it
and
at
I
home
feel like
with your family.
given your job and not that you should do this at your job, but if you want to see a really good movie that combines high school and drinking, watch Another Round on Hulu.
Oh, I'll have to check that out.
Danish movie. It just won the Oscar for best foreign film the other night.
Yeah, my dad was telling me about that. That's the one where the teacher, like, they do a study and the teachers drink or teach better buzzed.
Well, yes,
sober.
not hammered, just buzzed.
But yeah, slightly buzzed.
Yeah,
but not drunk.
And sometimes people make an occasional miscalculation, and self-medication happens some of the times. But yeah, it's and since it's a European film, it's got a pretty nuanced approach to it.
Yeah,
it's not in favor of it. It's not a cautionary tale that we should all clutch our handkerchiefs about. But it says, like, what would happen if we tried that?
Yeah. Isn't it also at the college level? Isn't it like college professors?
Well, this is something I didn't know until I heard my friends on the Love of Cinema podcast, which is all about plugging each other's podcast right now, because apparently in Denmark, the drinking age is 16.
Oh.
So therefore, high school seniors are already drinking.
I mean,
so
wow.
People
freshmen start drinking.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, they start, yeah, but so it's not as, you were talking about the laws in this country. You're saying specifically Arkansas. They have their own flavor of it, but I think there are a lot of places in the United States that are colored by our Victorian origins.
Yes, very much.
And so yeah, we have a weird relationship with alcohol where we clutch our pearls and are all sad about people who are drinking, and then everybody drinks. And then feels bad about themselves and beats themselves up.
There's the whole joke about Southern Baptists in the black trash bags.
Yeah,
ever heard that one?
I don't think I have.
So you always got to have a black trash bag so that nobody can see what you put inside.
Oh,
so when you put it out on the curb, they can't see what cans or bottles are in there.
Excellent.
Very true.
It's that hidden aspect.
You never know. Well, it looks like the naming debate will have to continue.
It will. Mm-hmm. And if anyone out there has any suggestions for Josh's Beervenger name, you can reach out to us at thebeervengers@gmail.com or on the social medias at the Beervengers. That's on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Just help us figure this all out. I
have the sense that Huck will listen to this and go, "Oh, you know what it should be." Boom.
Exactly.
And
after he's finished being on assignment, I'm sure he'll have plenty of ideas.
He is. That's it, Josh. He's the naming savant. That's exactly right.
Once he resumes his speaking voice, because right now he's only got a singing voice. And we'll figure all of that out. Josh, it's been really wonderful having you here. This has been a wonderful episode. And
thank you so much.
Yeah. Come back anytime.
Thank you guys for having me on. It's a fantastic time, and maybe one of these days we'll get one of you on, and we'll get one of you on our show, and then maybe we'll have the Arkansas Traveler on.
That's right. We got to bring your dad.
That'd be cool too. Yeah.
There we go. Beautiful.
Sounds great.
All right. Well, I see Huck is back over there clutching his uke. And come back. As I said, come back anytime. And anyone listening out there, come back next week. And it's been a great show.
Mm-hmm.
Well, with a Beervengers, Beervengers, Beervengers.
We're the Beervengers.